First Contact's desperate hour. The crystalline spires of New Haven Colony shattered like dreams. High Counselor Elara watched through the quantum feed as another settlement fell to the void swarm. Her translucent form pulsed with a deep indigo of despair as she witnessed her people's greatest achievements crumble. The Zatari had spent millennia building their civilization across the stars, creating perfectly harmonious environments within their crystal cities. Now those same cities were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they never imagined could exist. High Counselor, her aide, Ven, appeared in the chamber, his crystalline form flickering with anxiety. The outer defense grid has failed. The swarm, they've adapted to our resonant shields. Elara's inner light dimmed further. The resonant shields had been their people's greatest defense for generations, perfectly tuned energy barriers that had protected them from natural disasters and cosmic radiation. But the void swarm wasn't natural. It was something else entirely. "Show me the latest analysis," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of billions of lives. The holographic display filled the chamber with a cascade of data. The void swarm had evolved far beyond their initial encounters. What had once been simple shadow-like entities were now wielding technologies that shouldn't have been possible for their seemingly non-corporeal forms. They were using environmental warfare tactics that the peaceful Zatari had no defense against: extreme temperature fluctuations, toxic atmospheres, and radiation levels that would destroy any crystalline life form within minutes. "We've lost contact with the 7th sector," Ven reported, his voice barely a whisper. "The colonial hub at Luminous Prime. It's gone dark." Elara moved to the Great Archive Terminal, her mind racing. The Zatari were masters of science and art, creators of technologies that could reshape worlds into paradise gardens. But they had never needed to fight. Their defensive technologies had always been enough. Until now. "Access the xenological database," she ordered. "Search parameters. Species capable of surviving extreme environmental conditions. Cross-reference with combat capabilities." The archive hummed to life, sorting through millennia of collected data on every species the Zatari had ever encountered or observed. Most were like them, beings that evolved in carefully balanced environments. Those that came from harsher worlds rarely achieved spaceflight, too focused on mere survival to reach for the stars. Then the search stopped on a single entry. "Earth," Elara read, her inner light pulsing with sudden interest. "Show me everything." The data streamed forth, and with each new piece of information, Elara's hope grew stronger. The humans of Earth were unlike anything the Zatari had ever encountered. They had evolved on what most spacefaring races would consider a death world, a planet of such extreme environmental variations that it should have been impossible for intelligent life to develop. Earth's gravity was crushing by Zatari standards. Its temperature ranges were incredible, from freezing poles to scorching deserts. It experienced regular natural disasters: hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. And yet humans had not only survived but thrived. They had spread across their world, adapting to every hostile environment it offered. "They're perfect," Elara whispered, her form beginning to glow brighter with hope. "Look at their military capabilities, Ven. They've developed technologies to fight in every extreme environment their world possesses. They have warriors specially trained for Arctic warfare, desert combat, underwater operations." "But High Counselor," Ven interjected, "they're so young as a species. Their faster-than-light technology is primitive by our standards, and our long-range observations show they still engage in warfare among themselves." "That's exactly why we need them," Elara responded, her voice firm. "They understand combat in a way we never could. They've been fighting their entire existence, fighting their world, fighting each other, fighting to survive. And look at their cultural transmissions." The display shifted to show human entertainment broadcasts, stories of heroes facing impossible odds, tales of sacrifice and courage, documents of real historical battles where small forces had overcome overwhelming enemies through strategy and sheer determination. They have something we lack, Allura continued, a warrior spirit. And more importantly, they have the physical capabilities to fight in the very conditions the Void Swarm is using against us. She accessed another data stream, showing human military training exercises, soldiers operating in protective suits within radioactive zones, special forces conducting operations in chemical warfare environments, troops training in environmental conditions that would kill a Zatari in seconds. The Swarm's environmental attacks, they're using conditions that humans already know how to fight in, Allura realized. Conditions they've been dealing with since before they even achieved spaceflight. A new alert flashed across the display. Another colony lost to the Swarm. Time was running out. Prepare the Stellar Envoy, Allura commanded. It's our fastest ship. Plot a course to the Sol system. High Counselor, Ven's voice was heavy with concern. Are you certain? First contact with an emerging species, to ask them to fight our war. We have no choice. Allura's form pulsed with determination. The Void Swarm will reach our core worlds within a standard year. All our technology, all our achievements, everything we've built over thousands of years will mean nothing if we can't stop them. And we can't stop them alone. She moved to the communication array, preparing to record a message that would change the course of two civilizations forever. To the people of Earth, she began, her form glowing with formal dignity. I am High Counselor Allura of the Zatari Collective. We come to you in our darkest hour. As she spoke, Allura wove together the story of her people's desperate plight. She included all the tactical data on the Void Swarm, the environmental conditions they were creating, the failures of Zatari defenses. But more than that, she tried to convey why she believed humanity could help. Their unique abilities, their warrior spirit, their proven capacity to overcome impossible odds. We offer you access to our technology, our knowledge, everything we have, she concluded, in exchange for your help in defending our civilization. We believe you may be the only species in the known galaxy capable of fighting this enemy. The message was sent, broadcasting on frequencies the Zatari knew Earth's detection systems could receive. The Stellar Envoy, loaded with diplomatic personnel and technical experts, began its faster-than-light journey toward the Sol system. As Allura watched the ship depart, she found herself studying Earth's image in the display once more. Such an unassuming planet, looking deceptively peaceful from space. Who would have thought that such harsh conditions could produce a species that might now hold the key to saving one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations? The humans have a concept they call heroes, she said softly to Ven. Beings who rise to face great challenges, who fight to protect others even at great personal risk. Their stories are full of moments where hope seemed lost, but heroes emerged to turn the tide. Another alert flashed. The Void Swarm had taken another system. But for the first time in months, Allura's inner light didn't dim at the news. Now we must hope, she said, that humanity will choose to be heroes one more time. Not just for themselves, but for us. The Stellar Envoy accelerated to faster-than-light speed, carrying with it the hopes of the Zatari people. Behind it, crystal cities continued to fall to the advancing swarm. Ahead lay Earth, a harsh crucible that had forged humanity into something unique in the galaxy. Warriors who could survive where others could not. Fighters who had mastered the very conditions that were now being used as weapons. First contact was about to occur not with a peaceful exchange of knowledge, but with a desperate plea for salvation. And in the halls of power on Earth, alarms were already beginning to sound as the Zatari transmission reached their sensors. Admiral Chen sat in the darkened briefing room of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters, watching the alien transmission for the fourth time. Around her, the assembled military and civilian leadership of Earth sat in stunned silence, still processing the implications of humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Play the environmental data again, she ordered, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The images shifted to show the conditions the Void Swarm was creating in conquered Zatari systems, radiation zones that would kill their crystalline forms, extreme temperature variations that shattered their cities, toxic atmospheres that corroded their very essence. A slight smile played across the Admiral's face. "Well," she said, breaking the silence, "it seems all those billions we spent on environmental warfare training are about to pay off in a way none of us expected." The tension in the room broke slightly as several officers chuckled. It was true. Humanity had spent centuries developing ways to fight in every hostile environment Earth could produce. And then some. They had special forces trained for combat in conditions that, apparently, most alien species considered impossible to survive in. "The Zatari ship will arrive in 36 hours, General Santos reported. "They're apparently pushing their faster-than-light technology to its limits to reach us quickly. Then we have 36 hours to prepare humanity's first interstellar military expedition." Admiral Chen stood, her voice carrying the weight of command. "I want our best environmental warfare units assembled. Full combat loadouts, all environmental protection gear. And get me everything we have on crystal-based life forms. We need to understand exactly what our new allies can and cannot survive." As the room erupted into activity, Chen found herself looking at the image of the Zatari High Counselor frozen on the main display. Such a beautiful, peaceful-looking being. How desperate must they be to seek help from a species they'd only observed from afar? "Well," she muttered to herself, "humanity has always wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not. And our first alien allies need us precisely because we come from a world that most species consider hell." She smiled again, more broadly this time. Time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. Warriors of a harsh world. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the sweltering heat of Death Valley, watching her environmental warfare unit run their final drills before the Zatari ship's arrival. The temperature inside her combat suit read 54 degrees Celsius, 129 degrees Fahrenheit, and the radiation sensors were screaming warnings about the depleted uranium rounds being used on the practice range. Just another day at the office for the 1st Special Environmental Combat Division. "Team leads, report." She commanded through the tactical network. One by one, her squad leaders checked in, their voices clear despite the harsh conditions. "Alpha Squad, green across the board. Bravo Squad, ready to roll. Charlie Squad, all systems nominal. Delta Squad, locked and loaded." Sarah allowed herself a small smile behind her helmet's faceplate. These were the best of the best. Soldiers specifically chosen and trained for combat in the most extreme environments Earth could offer. And now they were about to become humanity's first interstellar combat force. "All right, people," she broadcast to the entire unit. "One last run through Scenario 7. Full environmental hazards, multiple threat vectors. Show me why you're the ones chosen for first contact." The training ground came alive with activity. Automated defense systems began pumping toxic gas into the already harsh environment. Temperature regulators kicked in, creating pockets of extreme cold amid the desert heat. Radiation levels spiked in random patterns. It was as close as Earth's military could come to simulating the conditions reported in the Zatari distress call. Her troops moved like well-oiled machines through the chaos. They had trained for years to fight in environments that would kill unprotected humans in minutes. Now those skills would be used to save an alien civilization. "Commander," her XO, Lieutenant James Rodriguez, called over a private channel. "The brass is here." Sarah turned to see a convoy of vehicles approaching the observation post. Admiral Chen stepped out of the lead vehicle, accompanied by several officers, and more surprisingly, a team of xenobiologists. "Commander Chen," the Admiral greeted her as Sarah removed her helmet. "How's the final preparation going?" "We'll be ready, ma'am," Sarah replied confidently. "My people can operate in any environment the Void Swarm throws at us. The real question is how we'll coordinate with the Zatari." One of the xenobiologists stepped forward, Dr. Emily Wong. "That's why we're here, Commander. We've been analyzing the technical data the Zatari transmitted ahead of their arrival. Their crystalline biology is fascinating and incredibly fragile by our standards. Dr. Wong activated a holographic display showing the internal structure of the Zatari. They're silicon-based life forms with an organized crystalline matrix that carries both their consciousness and their biological functions. Extraordinary technology, but extremely vulnerable to environmental stress. Which is exactly why they need us, Admiral Chen added. The Void Swarm is using environmental warfare because it's devastatingly effective against the Zatari. But those same conditions, they're what your unit trains for every day. Sarah watched as Charlie Squad executed a perfect breach and clear operation through a zone of concentrated chlorine gas. My concerns are about integration, Admiral. We can fight in these conditions, but how do we protect our allies while we do it? The Zatari are bringing something they call harmonic barrier technology, Dr. Wong explained. It can create stable environmental bubbles. We think we can modify it to work with our combat suits, allowing us to extend our environmental protection to them when needed. A massive explosion rocked the training ground as Delta Squad detonated their practice charges. Through the dust and debris, Sarah could see her troops maintaining perfect formation, their movements precise despite the hellish conditions. The Zatari ship will be here in 18 hours, Admiral Chen said. They're bringing their best scientists and what's left of their military leadership. I need your unit ready to deploy as soon as we've established protocols for joint operations. Sarah nodded, her mind already running through the tactical implications. We'll be ready, Admiral. But I want to make one thing clear to our new allies. We're not just going to fight for them. We're going to teach them to fight for themselves. Agreed, the Admiral smiled. That's why you were chosen to lead this mission, Commander. Your unit has the best training record in the UEDF, both in combat operations and in instructing other forces. A warning klaxon sounded across the training ground. Sarah checked her tactical display. Her troops had completed the scenario in record time, with perfect scores across all environmental challenges. If you'll excuse me, Admiral, Sarah said, replacing her helmet. I need to brief my people on first contact protocols. We're about to make history, and I want us ready for anything. As the senior officers departed, Sarah gathered her unit. 50 men and women stood before her in their advanced environmental combat suits, each one a testament to humanity's determination to master every hostile environment they encountered. Listen up, she broadcast. In 18 hours, we're going to meet our first aliens. They're going to be nothing like us. Crystalline beings that evolved in perfectly controlled environments. They've never had to fight for survival like humanity has. But now they're facing an enemy that's forcing them to adapt or die. She pulled up the tactical data on the Void Swarm, letting her troops study the environmental attacks they'd be facing. This enemy thinks they found the perfect weapon against the Zatari. They're using environmental warfare because the Zatari can't survive extreme conditions, but they're about to learn something. Sarah highlighted the combat statistics from their training runs. They're about to learn that there's one species in this galaxy that spent its entire existence learning to fight and survive in every environment imaginable. One species that looks at extreme conditions and sees tactical opportunities instead of insurmountable obstacles. Her troops stood straighter, pride evident in their stance. We are that species. We are humanity's first line of defense. And now we're about to become the galaxy's best hope against an enemy that thinks environmental warfare is their trump card. Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward. What are your orders, Commander? Full equipment check. I want every suit, every weapon, every piece of gear tested and certified. We're taking our entire environmental warfare package. Chemical, biological, radiological, thermal, you name it. If it can kill a human, we have a way to fight in it, and we're going to show the Zatari how it's done. As her troops dispersed to their tasks, Sarah remained in the command center, studying the Zatari technical data. Their technology was incredibly advanced in some ways. They're faster than light drives, their energy manipulation, their computational systems. but they had never developed the kind of environmental protection that humanity had created out of pure necessity. Specialist Torres, she called to her unit's technical expert. Start analyzing their harmonic barrier technology. I want to know everything about how it works before that ship lands. We need to figure out how to integrate it with our combat suits. Already on it, Commander, Torres replied, his fingers flying over his datapad. Their tech is amazing, but it's built around perfect stability. We might need to show them how to make it more combat ready. Sarah nodded. The cultural exchange would go both ways. Humanity would learn from the Zatari's advanced technology, while teaching them the harsh lessons that Earth had forced humanity to learn. The sun was setting over Death Valley, casting long shadows across the training ground. In less than a day, humanity would make its first official contact with an alien civilization. But it wouldn't be the peaceful exchange of scientific knowledge that so many had imagined. Instead, it would be an alliance forged in the crucible of war, with humanity stepping up to defend a more advanced, but less battle-ready species. Lieutenant Rodriguez, she called, get me the psychological profiles on all our troops. We need to select the ones who'll work best with the Zatari. We're not just going to be soldiers, we're going to be teachers, diplomats, and probably therapists too. You think they're ready for what real combat is like? Rodriguez asked. Sarah thought about the Zatari transmission, about the fear she'd seen in their crystalline forms as they watched their worlds fall to the void swarm. They're going to have to be. The galaxy's about to learn why you don't use environmental warfare against a species that evolved on a death world. As night fell over the desert, the 1st Special Environmental Combat Division continued their preparations. Soon, they would board humanity's first faster-than-light capable warship, built in secret for just such a contingency. Soon, they would meet beings from another world and begin teaching them the art of war. Soon, the Void Swarm would learn that their greatest weapon had become their greatest vulnerability, because they had chosen to fight in conditions that humans had mastered over millennia of evolution on their unforgiving world. The stars beckoned, and humanity's warriors were ready to answer the call. Trial by fire. Contact. Multiple void signatures, bearing 270. Commander Sarah Chen's combat suit automatically compensated as the atmosphere around her turned to poison. Through her enhanced visor, she watched the approaching wave of shadow-like entities, their forms rippling with an unnatural darkness that seemed to devour light itself. All units, combat positions, she ordered through the tactical net. Remember your training. These conditions are nothing worse than Saturn Station. They were making their stand in what remained of New Haven Colony, a Zatari outpost that had already been partially compromised by the Void Swarm. The crystalline buildings still stood, their once pristine surfaces now clouded and cracked from environmental stress. Behind the human defensive line, a group of Zatari scientists worked frantically to integrate their harmonic barrier technology with the human combat systems. Crystalline Matrix Specialist Wiener reports the integration is at 85%. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. She needs 5 more minutes. Sarah checked her environmental readings. The Void Swarm was their typical assault pattern. First came the atmospheric changes, turning breathable air into a toxic soup that would kill most species instantly. Then the temperature would drop to near absolute zero, followed by bursts of intense radiation. They're about to learn that humans wrote the book on fighting in NBC conditions, Sarah muttered. Alpha Squad, deploy thermal barriers. Bravo, get those radiation shields up. Charlie and Delta, prepare for close combat. The human lines came alive with activity. Specialized equipment that had been designed for fighting in Earth's most hostile environments was now being used to defend an alien world. The Void Swarm's approach turned the very air into a weapon, but every human soldier present had trained for exactly these conditions. Commander, a melodic voice came through her comm. Vina, the Zatari scientist she'd been working with for the past week. We've found a way to synchronize your protective fields with our harmonic barriers. The resonance patterns are extraordinary. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Zatari might be peaceful by nature, but their technical expertise was incredible. In just days of cooperation, they'd helped upgrade human environmental protection systems beyond what Earth's scientists had managed in decades. Good work, Vina. Start the deployment. All units, prepare for shield synchronization. A wave of energy pulsed through the defensive line as Zatari harmonic technology merged with human environmental shields. The result was beautiful, crystalline patterns of force that could withstand both the Void Swarm's environmental attacks and direct combat. First wave incoming, Rodriguez called out, temperature dropping rapidly. Sarah watched her suit's thermometer plummet. Around her, the Zatari buildings began to crack from the extreme cold. But her troops held firm. They trained in the vacuum of space, in liquid nitrogen chambers, in Earth's polar extremes. This was nothing new. Return fire, all positions. Show them what happens when you try to freeze a species that survived the Ice Age. The defensive line erupted with coordinated fire. Specialized weapons, designed to function in extreme conditions, sent streams of superheated plasma into the Void Swarm's ranks. The shadow-like entities recoiled, clearly not expecting such effective resistance. They're changing tactics, Sarah observed. Radiation spike incoming. All units, activate rad shields. The radiation meters on her HUD jumped off the scale as the Void Swarm released their next attack. But humanity had been dealing with radiation since they split the atom. Every soldier in her unit was equipped with the latest in radiation protection technology. Charlie Squad, push forward. Use their own radiation against them. Deploy the Cherenkov projectors. A series of devices activated along the human line, turning the deadly radiation into focused beams of blue-white energy. The Void Swarm's Ohm attack was being weaponized against them, their shadow forms disrupted by the concentrated particles. Commander, Vina's voice was excited. We're detecting instabilities in their physical matrix. The combined effect of your weapons and our harmonic barriers is creating a resonance cascade. Sarah quickly grasped the implications. All units, synchronize fire with the harmonic pulses. Time your shots with the barrier fluctuations. The battle devolved into a deadly dance of physics and combat tactics. Human soldiers, moving with practiced precision, in conditions that would kill most species, coordinated their attacks with the pulsing Zatari barriers. Each shot was timed to strike when the harmonic fields were at their peak, creating devastating resonance effects in the Void Swarm's forms. They're pulling back, Rodriguez reported. First time I've ever seen them retreat. But Sarah knew better. No, they're adapting. All units, prepare for. The ground beneath them erupted. The Void Swarm had burrowed under their position, emerging in clouds of toxic gas and radiation. But even this had been anticipated. Implement Scenario 12. Sarah ordered, just like the Yellowstone training runs. Her troops responded instantly, their movements showing years of training in toxic and unstable environments. Teams deployed portable environmental shields, creating safe zones for rapid movement. Others activated specialized sensors that could track the Void Swarm through solid matter. Vina, we need those harmonic barriers modulated for underground resonance. Already done, Commander. The Zatari scientist replied. Your species' ability to adapt in combat is remarkable. The battle raged for hours. The Void Swarm threw every environmental weapon in their arsenal at the human defenders. Extreme heat, absolute cold, hard radiation, toxic gases, even gravitational distortions. But each time, they found themselves facing troops who had trained specifically for these conditions. They're not used to resistance, Sarah realized as she watched another Void attack break against their defenses. They'd never fought anyone who could survive their environmental weapons, let alone turn them back against them. The turning point came when Vina completed the final integration of Zatari and human technology. The harmonic barriers, originally designed for perfect environmental stability, had been modified with human combat principles. They could now be used offensively, creating zones of rapidly shifting conditions that even the Void Swarm couldn't adapt to quickly enough. All units, final push, Sarah ordered. Deploy hybrid barriers and advance. The human lines moved forward, protected by shields that combined the best of both species' technology. Zatari harmonic fields pulsed in sync with human environmental systems, creating an impenetrable defense that could also be used as a weapon. The Void Swarm, for the first time in their campaign of conquest, found themselves outmatched in environmental warfare. Their shadow forms began to disintegrate under the combined assault, unable to maintain cohesion in the face of weapons designed by a species that had mastered survival in every hostile environment their homeworld could produce. Hours later, as the last Void entities retreated from New Haven Colony, Sarah stood with Vina among the defenders. The crystalline buildings around them showed battle damage, but they still stood. The first time a Zatari colony had survived a full Void Swarm assault. "I've never seen anything like it," Vina said, her crystalline form pulsing with what Sarah had learned to recognize as awe. "Your people fought in conditions that would destroy most species instantly, and you did it with such precision." Sarah removed her helmet, the environment having returned to normal. "This is what we trained for, even if we didn't know it at the time. Earth threw everything it could at us: extreme environments, deadly radiation, toxic atmospheres. We learned to survive it all, and then we learned to fight in it. But this was just one colony." Vina's light dimmed slightly. "The Void Swarm controls dozens of our worlds now, and they'll learn from this defeat, adapt their tactics." "Good," Sarah smiled grimly. "Let them adapt, because now we're going to teach your people how to fight back." This victory wasn't just about defending one colony. It was proof that the Void Swarm's greatest weapon can be overcome. She looked at the battlefield, where human troops were already setting up environmental monitoring stations and defensive positions. Teams of Zatari scientists moved among them, their crystalline forms glowing with renewed hope as they studied the combined technology that had achieved the impossible. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she called, "begin preparations for Phase 2. It's time to show the Zatari everything we know about fighting in hell." As the sun set over New Haven Colony, casting rainbow refractions through the crystalline structures, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had just fought its first interstellar battle, and they had done it by turning their greatest disadvantage, evolution on a death world, into their greatest strength. The Void Swarm had thought environmental warfare was their ultimate weapon. Instead, they had inadvertently chosen to fight humanity on the very terms that humans had mastered over millennia of surviving on their harsh, unforgiving world. "Commander," Rodriguez approached, "the Zatari High Council is requesting a full briefing on our combat techniques. They want to begin adapting their technology for defensive warfare immediately." Sarah nodded. "Tell them we'll start right away. The Void Swarm just learned that their environmental attacks don't work against us. Now they're going to learn something even worse." "What's that?" Vina asked. "That we're going to teach every Zatari colony how to fight like humans, and then they'll learn why you should never push a Death World species into a corner." The battle for New Haven Colony was over. The war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. But for the first time since the Void Swarm appeared, the Zatari had hope. They had found allies who didn't just survive in hell. They had mastered it. And now, those allies were ready to share their knowledge, to teach a peaceful species the harsh lessons that Earth had forced humanity to learn. The galaxy was about to change, and the Void Swarm would soon learn that environmental warfare was a game that humans had been playing, and winning, since before they left their home planet. The art of war. The crystalline training dome of New Haven Colony pulsed with multicolored light as Commander Sarah Chen watched a group of Zatari recruits attempt their latest exercise. Their forms flickered with anxiety as they manipulated the newly modified harmonic barriers, trying to maintain environmental stability while simultaneously creating defensive positions. "Better," she called out, her voice translated by the enhanced communicators they'd developed. But remember, the barrier doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes a little instability can be used to your advantage. This concept had been one of the hardest for the Zatari to grasp. Their entire civilization was built around perfect environmental control, maintaining ideal conditions for their crystalline forms. Teaching them to deliberately create and use environmental variations went against millennia of cultural programming. Lieutenant Rodriguez approached, his combat suit's readings displayed on Sarah's HUD. The latest modifications to their harmonic technology are holding up well. Vina's team has managed to increase their tolerance to environmental stress by nearly 300%. Sarah nodded, watching as one of the Zatari recruits successfully generated a defensive barrier while maintaining a zone of controlled instability around it. Exactly the technique that had proved so effective against the Void Swarm at the Battle of New Haven. "It's not just about the technology," she replied. "We're having to teach them an entirely new way of thinking. They've never had to consider how to use their environment as a weapon." The past month had been a crash course in warfare for the peaceful Zatari. After the successful defense of New Haven Colony, hundreds of their brightest minds had volunteered for combat training. They understood now that their survival depended on learning the arts of war that humanity had mastered over millennia. "Commander," a melodic voice called out. Vina approached, her crystalline form shimmering with what Sarah had learned to recognize as excitement. "We've completed the integration of your combat sensor systems with our quantum detection arrays. The results are extraordinary." Sarah followed the Zatari scientist to a nearby monitoring station. The displays showed a level of environmental awareness that far exceeded anything Earth's military had developed. By combining human combat sensors with Zatari quantum technology, they'd created systems that could predict and track environmental changes with unprecedented accuracy. "Outstanding work," Sarah said. "This will give us a significant advantage when the Void Swarm returns. Have you started production of the hybrid units?" "Yes, though we've had to modify our manufacturing processes significantly." Vina's form pulsed with a mix of colors that Sarah interpreted as both pride and concern. "It's the first time we've ever created technology specifically designed for combat." That was another cultural hurdle they'd had to overcome. The Zatari were master engineers and scientists, but they'd never developed weapons or defensive systems beyond their basic environmental shields. Teaching them to repurpose their peaceful technology for warfare had been a delicate process. "Commander," Rodriguez interrupted, "you need to see this." He pulled up a tactical display showing the latest intelligence from the front lines. The Void Swarm had changed their strategy since their defeat at New Haven. Instead of their usual environmental warfare tactics, they were now using more subtle approaches. Gradual temperature changes, slow building radiation fields, creeping atmospheric alterations. "They're learning," Sarah mused. "They realize their shock tactics don't work against us, so they're trying to wear down the defenses gradually." She turned to the Zatari recruits. "This is why we've been teaching you about environmental adaptation. It's not just about surviving sudden attacks. It's about maintaining combat effectiveness under constantly changing conditions." "But how can we fight an enemy that has endless patience?" one of the recruits asked, their form dimming with worry. "Our people have never had to endure prolonged environmental stress." Sarah smiled. "That's exactly what we're here to teach you. Humanity didn't just learn to survive extreme conditions. We learned to live in them, to operate effectively even when our environment is actively trying to kill us." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's various extreme environments: the freezing poles, scorching deserts, crushing ocean depths, and toxic volcanic regions. "Your people created perfect environments to live in," she continued. "We learned to adapt to whatever environment we found ourselves in. And now we're going to teach you how to do the same." The training continued, day after day. The Zatari learned not just combat techniques, but the fundamental mindset changes necessary for warfare. They studied human military history, learning how Earth's armies had adapted to fight in every conceivable environment. Vina proved to be an exceptional student, her scientific brilliance matching perfectly with her newfound warrior spirit. She led the team that continued to improve the hybrid technology, finding ways to combine Zatari environmental control with human combat systems. "I never imagined we could use our harmonic technology like this," she told Sarah one evening as they reviewed the day's training data. "We always saw environmental variance as something to be eliminated, but you've shown us how to use it as a tool." Sarah watched as another group of recruits ran through their exercises. The Zatari were natural engineers, and once they understood the principles of combat engineering, they began innovating in ways that surprised even their human instructors. "Your people have created something remarkable here," Sarah replied. "You mastered environmental control in ways humanity never did. We just helped you see how it could be used differently." An alert sounded through the training facility. Another void swarm attack on a distant colony. But this time, the defenders were ready. The latest intelligence showed the Zatari forces successfully holding their ground, using the techniques and technology they'd learned from their human allies. "Commander," Rodriguez called out, "the High Council is requesting an update on the training program. They want to know when we can begin deploying these techniques to other colonies." Sarah considered the progress they'd made. The Zatari recruits were now capable of maintaining combat effectiveness in conditions that would have killed them a month ago. Their modified technology was proving more effective than anyone had anticipated. "Tell them we're ready to begin the expansion phase," she decided. "Choose the best of our current trainees to become instructors. We'll start setting up training facilities in every major Zatari colony." As the message was sent, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary situation they found themselves in. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization had led to them becoming teachers in the art of war, showing a peaceful species how to fight for their survival. "There's something else," Vina said, her form pulsing with what Sarah now recognized as determination. "We've been analyzing the data from all our engagements with the Void Swarm, combining it with your combat expertise and our quantum detection technology. We think we found a pattern in their behavior." The Zatari scientist brought up a complex display showing environmental data from dozens of battles. "They're not just using environmental warfare as a weapon. They're using it to transform space itself. Each attack changes the fundamental quantum structure of the regions they conquer." Sarah studied the data, her military mind quickly grasping the implications. "They're not just trying to conquer your worlds. They're trying to make the galaxy uninhabitable for crystalline life forms." "Exactly," Venus' form brightened. "But now that we understand their goal, we can work to counter it. Your species has shown us that adaptation is possible, that we don't have to be limited by our natural environmental preferences." The training dome filled with the sound of harmonic barriers being activated as another group of recruits began their exercises. But now Sarah saw their efforts in a new light. They weren't just learning to fight. They were learning to evolve, to become something more than their peaceful ancestors had ever imagined. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she called out, "contact Earth Command. Tell them we need to accelerate the program. And send a message to Admiral Chen. We're going to need more environmental warfare specialists." As the messages were sent, Sarah turned back to the training field. The Zatari recruits were running through their combat drills with increasing confidence, their crystalline forms adapting to conditions that would have been fatal to them just weeks ago. "Your people are changing," she said to Vina. "Not just technologically, but culturally. You're becoming warriors while still maintaining your identity as creators and scientists." Vina's form pulsed with a complex mix of emotions. "We had to change. The galaxy changed around us, and we had to adapt or face extinction. But thanks to humanity, we're learning to do it on our own terms. The art of war, as humanity had learned it over millennia of conflict, was being taught to a species that had never known the need for it. But they were proving to be apt pupils, combining their advanced technology with their newfound combat knowledge in ways that even their human instructors hadn't anticipated." As night fell over New Haven Colony, Sarah watched the stars through the crystal dome. Somewhere out there, the Void Swarm was preparing their next move. But now they would face an enemy that was learning not just to survive their attacks, but to thrive in the face of them. The galaxy was changing, and the Zatari were changing with it. And humanity, born on a world that most species considered hell, was leading the way. Shattered stars and rising hope. The crystalline spires of Luminara Prime, crown jewel of Zatari civilization, shimmered with an inner light that had burned uninterrupted for 10,000 years. Commander Sarah Chen watched the ancient city through the viewport of the combined fleet's command center, knowing that within hours it would become a battlefield. The Void Swarm approaches, High Counselor Elara announced, her crystalline form pulsing with determined energy. Our quantum arrays detect 3 times the force they've ever gathered before. Then they know this is it, Sarah replied, studying the tactical displays. They're committing everything to this attack because they know we've turned their own strategy against them. The past 3 months had transformed the war. What began as a desperate defense of scattered colonies had become a coordinated campaign to drive the Void Swarm back. The combination of human combat expertise and Zatari technology had proved devastating, allowing the Allies to reclaim dozens of worlds. All units report ready, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. Human environmental combat teams are in position. Zatari defense forces show green across the board. Sarah nodded, still amazed at how far they'd come. The Zatari warriors now moved with confidence through conditions that would have killed their ancestors, their modified harmonic barriers allowing them to fight effectively in any environment. They had learned humanity's harsh lessons well. Vina, Sarah called to her friend and chief technical advisor. How are the new systems performing? The Zatari scientists' form brightened with pride. The quantum-enhanced environmental shields are operating at 127% of projected capacity. The integration of human combat systems with our harmonic technology is complete. The displays showed the combined fleet's defensive positions around Luminara Prime. Human warships, their hulls bristling with environmental warfare equipment, flew in formation with Zatari vessels that had been modified for combat. On the ground, mixed units of human and Zatari troops manned defensive positions that incorporated both species' technology. Multiple quantum distortions detected. A sensor operator called out, "Void Swarm emergence in 3, 2, 1." Space itself seemed to tear open as the enemy arrived. Shadow-like forms poured through dimensional rifts, immediately beginning their environmental attacks. Temperature gradients went haywire. Radiation levels spiked, and toxic gases began to spread through space. Just as we predicted, Sarah said grimly. All units, implement Battle Plan Omega. Show them what we've learned. The combined fleet sprang into action. Instead of trying to maintain environmental stability, they used the Void Swarm's attacks against them. Zatari ships generated controlled harmonic disruptions that channeled the enemy's environmental weapons back at them, while human vessels deployed specialized countermeasures developed from centuries of fighting in extreme conditions. They're adapting quickly, Rodriguez reported. Multiple attack vectors, trying to find weaknesses in our defense grid. Let them try, Sarah smiled. Vina, activate the quantum resonance system. This was their secret weapon, the culmination of everything they'd learned. By combining Zatari quantum technology with human environmental warfare expertise, they'd created a system that could turn the very fabric of space-time into a weapon. Quantum resonance field active, Vina announced, detecting widespread disruption in Void Swarm communication patterns. The battle unfolded across 3-dimensional space and quantum dimensions that only the Zatari could perceive. Human forces provided the tactical backbone, their experience in fighting through hell serving as the foundation for the combined strategy. Zatari warriors added their advanced technology and newfound combat skills, their crystalline forms glowing with fierce determination. They're targeting the city's environmental systems, Elara reported, her form flickering with concern, attempting to destabilize the atmospheric generators. Just as we expected, Sarah replied. Activate Defense Protocol 7. The city's crystalline spires suddenly pulsed with new energy. What appeared to be purely architectural features revealed themselves as part of an integrated defense system. The Void Swarm's environmental attacks were caught in a web of quantum fields and harmonic barriers, their energy redirected and dispersed. Multiple breaches in the outer defense grid. Rodriguez called out. Ground forces engaging. Sarah watched as human and Satari troops moved in perfect coordination. Environmental combat teams deployed portable shield generators that allowed their crystalline allies to fight effectively in the deteriorating conditions. Satari warriors used their modified harmonic technology to create zones of controlled chaos that confused and disrupted the enemy. They're pushing harder than we anticipated, Vina observed, her form showing traces of worry. The quantum resonance field is straining to contain their attacks. Sarah had expected this. The Void Swarm had shown remarkable tactical flexibility throughout the war, constantly adapting to new threats. But that's exactly what humanity had been preparing for. Implement Contingency Plan Delta, she ordered. All environmental combat teams switch to aggressive resonance patterns. Show them why you don't try to outmaneuver a species that evolved on a death world. The battlefield transformed as human forces began using environmental warfare techniques that had been developed for Earth's most extreme conditions. Teams that had trained in volcanic calderas deployed heat-based attacks that could melt stone. Units experienced in deep-sea operations created crushing pressure gradients. Arctic warfare specialists generated cold zones that approached absolute zero. Remarkable, Elara whispered, watching the battle unfold. Your people truly mastered every form of environmental warfare that our enemy uses against us. We had to, Sarah replied, remembering her own training in Earth's harshest environments. Our world gave us no choice. But now that mastery is saving yours, the tide began to turn as the combined forces pressed their advantage. The Void Swarm, for the first time in their long campaign of conquest, found themselves facing enemies who could not only survive their environmental attacks, but turn them back with interest. Commander, Vina's form suddenly blazed with excitement. The quantum resonance field is having an unexpected effect. We're detecting instabilities in their dimensional anchors. Sarah quickly grasped the implications. They're not just physical beings. They exist partially in quantum space, and we're disrupting their ability to maintain that existence. All units, she broadcast across the command network, concentrate fire on these coordinates. Maximum quantum disruption, full environmental warfare protocols. The combined fleet moved with practiced precision, focusing their attacks on the weak points Vina had identified. Human environmental warfare systems worked in concert with Zatari quantum technology, creating a devastating web of effects that struck at the very nature of their enemy. The Void Swarm's shadow-like forms began to destabilize, their ability to maintain coherence in normal space rapidly deteriorating. What had begun as an attempt to drive them back had become an opportunity to end their threat permanently. They're trying to retreat, Rodriguez reported. Multiple quantum signatures attempting to disengage. Not this time, Sarah said firmly. Vina, expand the resonance field. Full power to all systems. The quantum resonance field expanded, catching the fleeing enemies in its web. The Void Swarm, creatures that had terrorized the galaxy with environmental warfare, found themselves trapped in a battle space controlled by species who had mastered their tactics. Dimensional collapse detected, Vina announced. Their quantum signatures are destabilizing across all frequencies. The shadow-like forms began to dissolve, their connection to normal space-time fatally disrupted by the combined effects of human environmental warfare and Satari quantum technology. The species that had nearly conquered the galaxy through environmental attacks was being unmade by powers they had never imagined their victims could wield. Hours later, as the last traces of the Void Swarm faded from both normal and quantum space, Sarah stood with her allies in the Great Hall of Luminara Prime. The crystalline city had survived, its spires still reaching proudly toward the stars. "We did it," Vina said softly, her form glowing with a mix of joy and disbelief. "We actually did it." Together, Sarah agreed, looking at the mixed groups of human and Centauri forces celebrating their victory. Your people learned to fight, and ours learned that our greatest weakness could become our greatest strength. High Counselor Allura approached, her crystalline form radiating formal dignity. Commander Chen, humanity has given us more than just victory. You've taught us that adaptation and change are not things to be feared, but embraced. That even the harshest conditions can forge something remarkable. Sarah thought about Earth, the death world that had shaped humanity into something unique in the galaxy. That's a lesson our world taught us long ago. We just helped you learn it faster. As the celebrations continued, Sarah watched the stars through the crystal walls of the Great Hall. The galaxy was changing. The Centauri would never return to their purely peaceful ways, but they had learned to balance their artistic and scientific nature with the warrior spirit humanity had helped them discover. And humanity. They had found their place in the galaxy, not despite their harsh origins, but because of them. The species that had evolved on a death world had become teachers and protectors, showing others how to survive in a universe that wasn't always kind. What happens now? Vina asked, joining Sarah at the window. Now we rebuild, Sarah replied. And we prepare. The galaxy's a bigger place than we thought, and there might be other threats out there. But next time, she smiled at her friend, next time we'll face them together. The crystalline spires of Luminara Prime glowed with renewed strength, their light a beacon in the darkness of space. Two species, one born in perfect harmony and one forged in adversity, had found strength in their differences. Together, they had proved that even the harshest conditions could be overcome, that warriors could arise from peace, and that the very things that made survival difficult could become the keys to victory. The stars beckoned, and for the first time, both humans and Centauri looked to them, not with fear, but with hope. The lesson of the Deathworlders had been learned. Adaptation, determination, and the warrior spirit could overcome any challenge. The galaxy would remember this day, when the species that evolved in hell helped save heaven, and in doing so, changed both forever.